So we're starting our series on relationships, and I guess today is like the introduction. Give me a wave in the balcony. Great to see you up there. Are you ready for some good stuff? There's always good stuff in the Bible, isn't there? So we're just going to kind of, touch on a few things today and just kind of touch on relationships. Relationships are great. Do you know that? And I loved your piece there, Deli. It's so true. In isolation, we actually shrink. We actually diminish. There's no one to encourage us. There's no one to build us up. We get lost in our own insecurity. There's no one to balance us. We think we're always right. But there are things that God has placed in you. There are great things that God has placed in you that only come out when you're in relationship. Did you know that? There are things of strength and of passion. There are things like faith and dignity and honor and courage, and all of those things only come out when you are in relationships. When you are in the relationships that God has called you to be in, you're a bigger person. You're a stronger person, and you're well on the way to being the person that God has designed you to be. So it's not crazy when God said about Adam, it's not good for a person to be alone. Because on our own, we can't become that person that God wants us to be. That means we have to be in relationships. That means to be in a real relationship, we have to become vulnerable. That's a big thing, isn't it? Men struggle to make friendships. That's why a lot of male friendships are all based around activities. And that's a great stuff. But when it comes to the vulnerability, we can be, we don't want to go there. Feelings? But unless in relationships we are prepared to be vulnerable and to be honest and to open ourselves up, doesn't the Bible say, speak the truth in love? How we need to hear the truth. Sometimes that's a positive thing. You're doing great, mate. That was fantastic. Sometimes the truth is a corrective thing. Sometimes it's a leading thing or a guiding thing. But if we want to be the best, if you want to be the best, there's a saying at the moment, isn't there? Living your best life. It's kind of, anybody heard that? It's a little bit out of date really now, isn't it? Living your best life. As you come down the stairs in our house, there's a little plaque that Keely's put there, and we see it every morning as we're coming down the stairs, and it says this, living the dream. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm living the dream. It's good to be in the center of God's will and God's purpose. But if you want to not just live your best life, if you want to be your best you've got to put yourself in relationships and see what people will draw out of you. So I want us to read from the book of Ruth, chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. And we get it up on the screen. And Ruth is a really interesting book. It's between Judges and Samuel, and it's an account of a young woman who marries a man, marries into a family, and there's a famine in the land, and so her mother and father-in-law take her to another land. Well, while she is in the other land, her husband dies, her husband's brothers die, and the father-in-law dies. So it's just her, after marrying this man and leaving to another land, it's just her and her mother-in-law and her sister-in-law. And there's this kind of thing where they've gone from Bethlehem to Moab, and then the famine passes and they're going back to their homeland, but she's going back without her husband. And her mother-in-law is going back without her husband. Her sister-in-law is going back without her husband. And at this stage, Ruth has lost everything. She was a part of a great family. But as her husband dies, she has lost that. And all she has are these other two women. And on the way, the mother-in-law says, listen, to Ruth and Oprah, the other sister, you don't have to follow me anymore. I release you from whatever tie that you have. Oprah goes away, but this is what Ruth says. Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. And verse 17 says, where you die, I will be buried too. Where you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. And where you die, I will be buried too. See, let me tell you this, just starting out on this whole series, good relationships take commitment. They take absolutely solid, determined, intentional commitment. We live in a world where everything is casual. I remember back in the day when I started out as a pastor, we all used to sit on the platform, on chairs. You remember those days? And we all wore suits. Nobody else wore suits in the church, but if you were a pastor, every Sunday you would wear a suit. That's what we did. As I kind of, grew and things began to change, I began to realize that nobody else was wearing a suit. That it's only us pastors. We look like the mafia sat up there. The pastors and the elders sat on the chair. No wonder people, felt a little intimidated by all these men in the suits at the front. What must it have looked like, to people that come into church? All these guys sat up there like the mafia. No women, just the guys, all in black suits. Some of them had their briefcases down the side as well. I remember as we took on our own church, and I went on this whole kind of journey as do I need to wear the suit anymore? And I remember the first day I turned up to preach at church wearing a pair of jeans. I was like, what is going to happen? It was like Brexit, seriously. I'm like, am I going to have a church after this Sunday? We were in this little hall and there were 30 people, and I have never been so nervous. Not the fact that I had to get up and preach, not the fact of, we relied on the Spirit of God, but what I was really nervous about was that I was wearing a pair of jeans. I like coming casual. It's much easier, isn't it? Just put on what you feel. Just be casual. If you want to go jeans and jacket, you can go jeans and jacket. If you wake up in the morning and you feel like, I'm going to wear some trainers, you can wear some trainers. Casual. And we live in a world where casual is better. And we take that attitude into relationships. We want relationships that are casual because we don't want to be tied down. We want to be free. We don't want to feel like we're being controlled by anyone. We don't want to feel like this is heavy. And so we're in relationships as long as they're fun. Friendships. Dating relationships. Sometimes sexual relationships. Friendships, work relationships, jobs. We're casual. As soon as that friendship starts to become imposing, as soon as that friendship starts to desire something from me that I don't want to give, hey, it's casual. See you later. Defriend you on Facebook. I'm off with somebody else. Soon as a relationship, a dating relationship, a romantic relationship, shall I say, as soon as that person starts to want some kind of commitment, it's like, hey, see you later. Off to the next one. People treat relationships as casual. People treat their Christian relationships as casual. I even see people treat their church relationships as casual. Oh, I love this. This is great. Oh, great band, great work. Oh, look at the programs. Wow, you get a glossy booklet. This is great. Bring all my friends. Sign up to everything. But as soon as there's an issue, As soon as a connect group leader begins to speak into your life over something, as soon as church says, listen, I want you to commit to something, it's like, oh no, you're asking too much of me. And we move off and we just go somewhere else. Let me tell you this, you will never be the person God has called you to be if you live a casual life and you have casual relationships. The people that are in your life, many of those people, they're not just there. They didn't just turn up. God brought them into your life. He knows who you need. The fact that you're in this church is not just a coincidence or something that happened by chance. God brought you here. And the people that come into your life have the power to bring the purpose of God out in your life, to challenge you, to love you, to encourage you, to do life and ministry with you, and to bring out of you everything that God has placed within you. See, Ruth says this, and this is relationship that will bring health and life and vitality wherever you go. She reckoned that God had brought this woman into her life. She recognized that this relationship meant something, and there was something of honor and dignity and integrity and godliness about her, that she wasn't just going to walk away on this woman. And she makes a binding statement. She says this, wherever you go, I will go. That's commitment, isn't it? And good relationships say this, listen, wherever you go, I will go. When you are traveling and the road becomes difficult, I'm going to be there with you. And I will help you when all hell has broken loose on your life. When things are going great and your journey is in a great place, I'm going to be there with you. In your ups and your downs. When I come round and you've got the raging hump and I just don't want to go anywhere near you and you're upset about something, do you know what? I'm not going to be offended. I am going to stay with you in your difficult situation. Because that is the nature of God himself. It reveals the heart of God. His eternal abiding presence. Jesus said, I will never leave you. You know that? The moment you put your trust in Jesus, these words were spoken over your life by him. I will never leave you. When you fall in sin, when you think wrong thoughts, when you behave in a wrong way, when your attitude stinks, he will never leave you. When you lose your job or you lose your family, when you're not able to give, when you're sick and you can't serve how you want to serve, he will never leave you. No matter what you think, do, or say, Christ has bound himself to you. In fact, he has bound himself to you in an unbreakable, binding covenant that was sealed with his own blood. Just as in the old covenant, God was bound to a relationship agreement with Israel, and it was sealed with the blood of lambs and the blood of oxen sprinkled on the mercy seat. So in the new covenant, Jesus made a promise with you. I will never leave you. And he sealed that promise in his own blood. See, true friends, true husbands, true wives, true brothers, true sisters, true colleagues, true disciples, they say this to each other: wherever you go, I will go. Your people are my people. You see, in relationship, it understands this, that we belong together. You know, I've just loved the call of God in my life. I've loved the journey. I've loved church and the whole kind of all of the ups and downs. I love being with the people of God, with my family and my friends. And I guess over the, Keith, 25 years we've been in ministry, there's probably only been 2 seasons where it's been really difficult. I mean, there's ups and downs. You have good weeks, you have not so good weeks. You have great weeks, you have challenges. That's just life, isn't it? But sometimes you go through the fire. And there's been a couple of times in our lives and in our ministries that we have actually gone through the fire. And I remember one time, many, many years ago, where the battle that we went through was so intense and so fierce that it actually made me ill. And everything actually stopped working. And I physically started to turn yellow. And I was really ill. And it was the stress and all of that and everything that was going through. And we were the doctors and we were up the hospital and it was a really tough time. And everything and everyone seemed to be against me. And in those times, I thought about my people. I thought about Pete and Jaya. I thought about Tom and Ariel. And in that difficult season, every Wednesday we had our leadership team meeting. They would come and they would meet around our house and we would eat together and we would pray together. And in those times of absolute isolation and loneliness and feeling like a failure and feeling like the world was against me and I didn't know if I was actually going to get through this. And Keely will testify to this. I thought about my people. I thought about my team. And often I would spew over them how I was feeling. And they stood with me. They prayed with us. They were there week after week. They were my people. Through thick and through thin, through every challenge, they were there. And whenever I felt like giving up, I thought about my people who would never leave me and I would never leave them. And it gave me the strength, along with much prayer and seeking God, to come through the other side. And I want to tell you today, you are my people. You're my people. And I'm your people. And I preach in many places. But the one place that I long to be more than anywhere else is right here with you. You're my people. And I'm your people. And some of you, I've never even spoken to. I've never sat down and had a coffee with. You've never been to my house. Some of you, I can't even remember your names. There are so many people that come in and that come out. But let me tell you this, where you go, I will go. You're my people. Your God, He's my God. Your calling, it's my calling. Your church, it's my church. And strong friendships are built as we commit together to encourage each other. Doesn't it say that in Hebrews? Encourage one another. Doesn't it say in Galatians, build one another up? Carry one another's burdens. Challenge one another. Teach one another. Pray for each other. All of these things, they build us up. They encourage us. They strengthen us. Relationships take commitment. And if you want to be a good friend, a good husband, a good disciple, you got to learn to give yourself to people. I've got great friends that I've had for years, and I've had to be intentional in all these years to phone them up, to text them, to be with them, to spend time with them. And those friendships have added strength to me. I can pick the phone up. I've got friends all around the world at any time. Well, not literally all around the world, but yeah, come on. Can't exaggerate, can you? But in different different places in the world. I got great friends. And at any given time, whatever I'm going through, I can phone them and they'll pick up. See, it doesn't matter how busy I am, there are certain numbers that come through on my phone that it doesn't matter what I'm going through, I will always pick them up. Because I'm committed. And they're committed to me. Good relationships take commitment. If you want to be in good relationships, here's a quick plug. We're going away to venture as men. I think there was about 30 of us who went away last year, and we just had an incredible time. It's so hard to get guys to go away. But I want to encourage you, if you want good friendships, if you want to feel support, if you want to be more of a man, we all want to be manly, don't we? If you want to be more of a man, then get around other men. Sensitive guys, not so sensitive guys. Guys with banter, guys that are big and strong, guys that are a little bit flimsy. No, I'm not looking at you there, Andrew, I'm not. Heather patted you on the back. You're one of the big strong ones, Andrew, you are. I want to encourage you guys. I know sometimes you're like, I don't know what we're going to do. I'm going to have to sit down and talk to somebody. Listen, it's amazing. God's going to do something incredible. And having good friendships will make you a stronger man and a better man and a more godly man. God has brought these guys into your life for a reason. If you're part of this church and you're not part of a connect group, I'm like, what are you doing? Seriously, why would you not make some friends and get some people around you who are going to pray for you? You might be busy. You're not too busy for this. We need to get our priorities right. We need people. If we've got good people, we're going to be stronger out there. If we give out all of our time to everything out there and nothing for building strong relationships, we're going to be weaker for it. So I want to, come on, join a connect group. If there aren't enough connect groups for all of you, then why don't you come and see me and you can lead a connect group. But let's get together. Let's encourage each other. Let's say, hey, do you know what? Wherever you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. And the last thing she says is so powerful, isn't it? And where you die, I will be buried. I wonder, husband and wives, if you ever talk about that. Where you're going to be buried. Keely and I, we've plotted out our little plot. And for us, where you die, that's where I will be buried. There's no question marks. There's no ups or downs or in or outs. We're in this for life until it finishes. And then we get to heaven. And there's no more marriage. So heaven, there will be no cuddles in heaven. I hate to say that. Thank you. Oh, did you hear that? We better take that off the tape. This is a relationship session here. Keely, there'll be no animals in heaven. I'm sorry about that. Because it's heaven. No. We've got to be commitment. There's got to be grace in relationships, you know that? We've got to be gracious. Some of the biggest mistakes that we make is we put too high expectations on people. We put too high expectations on our friends, wives and husbands, whatever relationship. You expect too much from people, and they expect too much from you. And we've got to recognize that we're all on a journey, and that we all make mistakes, and that we're all learning. We're growing, and we've got to be gracious with each other. We read about Paul and Barnabas. Hands up if you know the story. Paul and Barnabas, when they fell out. So basically, Paul and Barnabas were set apart and sent out to go into all the world, preach the gospel, just like we are. And on their first missionary journey, they took John Mark. And they were having a great time. They were reaching the lost and great things were happening. But when they got to Salamis, I guess that probably in Turkey, Where does salami come from? That's Italy. We stick with salamis. But they were there, and John Mark decided that he wanted to go home. He left them halfway through. I don't know why, but we don't know that. But halfway through, this young man, he left them. When they were planning the second missionary journey, Barnabas wanted to take John Mark. But the Apostle Paul, because John Mark had left him, he didn't want to take him. And I can kind of maybe imagine what the conversation was like. Barnabas going, let's take John Mark. And the Apostle Paul saying, I'm not taking him. He let me down. He's a lightweight. And Barnabas says, come on, he's a young man. It was his first mission trip. And Paul's like, I know, but the guy needs to learn commitment. There were other young men there. They never went home to their mothers. We were all struggling. This was important. He let me down, and I'm not going to take a chance on taking him again. Barnabas. Come on, Paul. You were young once. You were reckless. You made mistakes. Give the guy a chance. There's something in it. Where's grace in this, Paul? Don't start talking to me about grace. What do you know about grace? I'm an apostle. I understand what the apostolic ministry is. Who do you think you are? Telling me about pastoral. Well, what do you know about pastoral? You apostles, you're all the same. You never think about people. And they had this the Bible says it was a sharp bust up. Anybody had a sharp bust up with someone in the church before? Let me tell you, it's all right. We have different opinions. We have different values in some things. But our main values are the same. And so sharp was their disagreement that they went their separate ways. They split over it. The Apostle Paul was, I'm just going to carry on doing my thing. Doesn't the Bible say, first of all, apostles? And Barnabas is like, right, okay, if you want to be like that, I'm going to take John Mark. They both did what they thought was right in God's sight. Isn't that funny how that can happen in relationships? How two different people so totally disagree, yet both of them believe with all of their heart they're doing what's the right thing. And so Barnabas takes John Mark and he mentors John Mark and he spends time with John Mark, and off Paul goes. But I thank God for grace that young man, they didn't write him off because he didn't meet their expectations. I'm so glad that they recognised that actually John Mark, there was something in him, and that John Mark was on a journey too. See, if Barnabas and Paul, both of them show grace, because later on we read in 2 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 14, Paul says this to Timothy, send John Mark to me because he has been useful to me in my ministry. So at some point there's been grace. And let me tell you this, if there wasn't grace from Paul and there wasn't grace from Timothy, we wouldn't have the gospel of Mark today. And we've got to understand that in relationships we need to be gracious to each other. We need to allow each other to make mistakes. You've got to be committed. You've got to be gracious. Thirdly, I'm going to whip my last 2 points through quickly. Thirdly, you've got to be wise. You've got to be wise about the people that you allow into your world and into your life. 2 Corinthians tells us this, and you know this, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. That's a clear instruction. If you want to build relationships, there's nothing wrong with having friends that are non-Christians, with trying to reach people that are non-Christians, hanging out with people that are non-Christians. Hey, Jesus hung out with the tax collectors and sinners all the time. And the religious people had an issue with that. There's nothing wrong with hanging out with people, but your intention and your heart has always got to be, I'm going to reach these people. I'm going to get into their world. I'm going to share my faith with them. I'm going to love them and I'm going to bring them to Christ. And that's a lifelong commitment, and maybe they'll never get there, but you don't give up on them. But what we don't do is we are not yoked together. Our values are distinctly different. We don't give up going to the house of God because we're doing something with the unsaved people. We've got to recognize that it's God first, that their values are not our values. We love them, but we don't love what they do sometimes. There has to be that clear distinction. The people that you yoke yourself with, the people that you commit yourself to, they can either build you up or they can tear you down. They can either encourage and propel you into your God-given destiny, or they can destroy you. They can destroy your faith. They can destroy your self-esteem with their own negativeness, with their own bitterness, with their own lack of faith. Proverbs says this, that the company of fools brings ruin. Psalm 1 says, do not sit with the mockers, but you delight in the law of the Lord. So the people that you connect and bind yourself to, you've got to be so careful. You know, one thing that I've learned over the years is to be very careful about those that I allow into my inner circle. Those who speak to me and I listen to. You have those people in your world, don't you? You've got to be vulnerable. Any of my team can speak to me and say, Roy, that was a bit of a bad attitude. Or Roy, that was great. Or Roy, we love you. Or Roy, I think you're a little bit tired today. Why don't you let Keely lead this? Every one of them can do that because they've earned the right. Because I trust them. And they trust me. And there are many of you who are in my world who I trust you and you trust me, and we speak into each other's world. But I'm very careful about those who I allow to speak into my world. We've got to be wise in the people we choose to bring into our inner circle. And the final thing, as we finish this and the whole Ruth story, she'd lost her line. She'd lost her future. But as they came back, they brought her back, and Boaz. So Naomi led Ruth back to Boaz, who was her kinsman redeemer. And in that culture, if your husband died, you were out of the family, you had no inheritance from that family, your line was dead. But if there was another man in that family that was alive, he was honor bound to redeem you, to bring you back into your inheritance, to bring you back into your family line. And because of Ruth's dedication and commitment to Naomi, Naomi led Ruth to her kinsman redeemer. She led her to Boaz, who was the one who redeemed her, who married her, who brought her back into the family. And she regained her line. And if you read in the Gospels, you see that she's in the line of David and in the line of Jesus himself. And let me finish by saying this. Good friends will always point you to your Redeemer. There is one who, when you were far away, when you had broken every one of God's laws, when your heart was wicked, when you turned away from God, he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for you, that you would be forgiven. He is your Redeemer. He is the one who has brought you back to God. And listen, good friends will always bring you back to your Redeemer. They will always point you back to God. They will cause your faith to be stronger and not weaker. You know, as I finish today, this first session, I want to say to you today, there is a Redeemer. There is one who it doesn't matter how far away you've run, how far away from God you feel. There is one who is here today who wants to bring you back into a relationship with God, to forgive you for your past. That's why he died on the cross for you. And just as I close, maybe we could just all close our eyes for a moment. I'm going to pray. And if you're here today and you're saying, Roy, I've been far away from God. I know that I need forgiveness. I want God in my life. If you're here and you say, Roy, I believe that Jesus Christ is my Redeemer. I believe that Jesus died on the cross for me, that my past might be forgiven. If you're saying to me today, Roy, I want to believe on the name of Jesus and be made right with God. If that's you right now, I'm going to say a simple prayer. God is here and he hears your heart. He wants to be in that relationship with you. He has bound himself eternally to you to be your God and for you to be his people. So why don't you say this prayer after me, just in your heart. God's going to hear it this morning. It's a prayer saying, God, I'm coming back. I'm coming back to you. Here we go. Heavenly Father, I know that I've wandered far away from you. I know there are things that I've done in my life that I'm not proud of. But I also know that you can forgive me. I thank you, Jesus, that you died on the cross for me. Please come into my life. Please redeem me and bring me back to God. Help me to follow you. In Jesus' name. Amen.